Developing right now on Morning News Now, deal in doubt. New overnight, plans to finalize a peace agreement between the U.S. and Iran put on hold just hours after the U.S. lifted a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. Now, President Trump and his administration defending the terms of the deal as criticism grows.
Unfortunately, the president is receiving some really bad advice on this deal. I don't want to see us send a penny to the Ayatollah.
The idea that they get benefits before they change their behavior is fundamentally a talking point that is issued by people who want the conflict to continue indefinitely.
We'll have the latest developments and the impacts here at home. Also this morning, devastation in the south after days of downpours, leaving entire neighborhoods underwater with millions still at risk this morning. Meanwhile, in the Midwest, a massive cleanup effort underway after a series of reported tornadoes. Plus, we're tracking triple-digit heat for several states. We have your full weekend forecast straight ahead. Then, a major breakthrough for women's health. The new research crediting a common vaccine for reducing cervical cancer deaths down to almost zero. And a grand opening fit for a president. This morning, the new Obama Presidential Center in Chicago officially opening to the public on this Juneteenth holiday. We will show you yesterday's star-studded ceremony, plus hear the former president share his vision for the center with our friend Craig Melvin. It is great to be with you on this Friday morning. I'm Jessica Layton, in for Joe and Savannah today. We begin this morning with an abrupt about-face in talks between the United States and Iran. A planned formal agreement signing ceremony between the two sides set for today in Switzerland has been postponed. President Trump signed the 14-point agreement this week while at the G7 summit in France. But it is unclear when final talks between the two nations will now take place. The White House confirming last night Vice President J.D. Vance would not travel to Switzerland as planned. Now, the Memorandum of Understanding lays out the terms for ending the war and reopening the Strait of Hormuz, but right now it's raising more questions than answers. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill also have their doubts regarding the terms of the deal. NBC's Bofta Yamam joins us now from Washington with the latest developments on this. Bofta, good morning.
Good morning, Jessica. The agreement stirring controversy on Capitol Hill. This, as Vice President J.D. Vance actually will not be traveling to Switzerland today to help that final peace deal move forward. As you mentioned, he's no longer going, saying technical talks have not been finalized. Meanwhile, Iran isn't holding back, claiming the interim agreement as a victory. An initial agreement between the United States and Iran to end the war and reopen the Strait of Hormuz is causing a different ripple effect in Washington. Some of the president's own party balking at one of the key points, the possible $300 billion rebuilding fund for Iran.
Which they'll use some of it to support things that we don't care for.
I wouldn't want to give Iran any money. So let's see what's in it and how it's structured and so forth.
Signed late Wednesday, the agreement starts the clock on a 60-day negotiating window focused on resolving key issues around the future of Iran's nuclear program, including Iran's commitment that it won't procure or develop nuclear weapons. More peace talks expected Friday, but now Vice President J.D. Vance scrapping plans to travel and meet with Iranian leaders in Switzerland. Meanwhile, Vance rebuffed reports that Iran got the better end of the agreement.
If they don't change their behavior, they don't get the benefit of the bargain.
Under the agreement, the U.S. would lift sanctions on Iran, plus unfreeze funds and assets linked to the country's regime. Some Democrats stayed critical, calling the agreement a historic failure.
This was not only a blunder and a mistake, but it's a costly one, and perhaps the biggest presidential failure that we've seen in 20 years.
Literally everything that President Trump said he was trying to accomplish with this war has failed to accomplish.
But world leaders attending the G7 summit mostly threw their support behind the agreement, hoping for some relief for the global economy. Now, President Trump has suggested the deal might not hold once the text is finalized, and that if he was unhappy with how the terms were executed, he would resume the war. In Washington, Bofta Imam, NBC News. Jessica, back to you.
Bofta, thanks so much. For more on this fallout from the deal in Washington, let's bring in NBC News White House reporter Catherine Doyle. Catherine, good morning. Great to have you. President Trump said that Vice President Vance is the, quote, fall guy if the talks with Iran go sideways. We are already seeing this play out a bit today after Vance's trip to Switzerland was abruptly canceled overnight. What has he had to say about the president's comments, and is it a political gamble for him to take on such a public-facing role in these negotiations?
Hi, Jessica. Good morning. As you mentioned, of course, there's an element of risk for the vice president. He's been out front on this deal. He's been leading the negotiations, and he's been key in defending the agreement all week. As you mentioned, the talks overnight, the talks this weekend have been postponed. We don't yet know when those are going to resume. But he's also taking the president's comments lightly about what the impact on his political future could be. The president had joked about Vance being held responsible for what would happen. Take a listen to what Vance said yesterday.
I think the president was joking, but as he often does. But no, I think, look, the entire team has worked very well on this, and we've got this thing to a very good place for the American people. Now, I have seen some progressive criticisms of me personally saying, what experience does the vice president of the United States have with hostile, high-stakes negotiations? And I would point those progressive critics to the fact that just 2 days ago, I spent over an hour on The View.
So as you can hear, the vice president is using humor to deflect from the criticism. He's joking there that his host on The View and comparing them to his Iranian counterparts. And as we know, the talks are going to be delayed. He's supposed to arrive in Switzerland. He was supposed to arrive in Switzerland soon, and now that looks set to be delayed a little bit further. We don't know yet exactly when that's going to happen. But the 60-day clock on the negotiations have already started. And as President Trump said earlier this week, he could resume strikes if they don't reach an agreement in time.
Catherine,
Jessica?
The Pentagon is finalizing an internal investigation into that deadly airstrike on the Iranian elementary school. We know that happened on the first day of the war 4 months ago. This is according to a person familiar with the probe. But there are some members of Congress who are concerned about how the Trump administration will handle whatever the findings may be. What more can you tell us on that?
So that investigation was one of the deadliest moments of the war for civilian casualties. There were around 170. It struck children. And at the time, the reports in the press suggested that the missile the fragments of the missile that were found related to were potentially part of an American cruise missile. So the Pentagon has been investigating that since that point. They're in the final stages of the investigation, and they're expected to share that soon. Well, the concern now is that the report could be classified. Just earlier this week, the president was asked about the report. It's been several months in the making, and he said, quote, "Mistakes are made, war is nasty," and punted questions about the upcoming report to the Pentagon. The question now for lawmakers is whether they're going to be able to get, is when they get that info, whether that's going to be released publicly. They've had trouble being able to get info from the Pentagon and from the administration on that so far. And so they're wondering what exactly the public is going to be able to find out about what happened on that deadly day.
All right, Catherine Doyle in Washington, thank you. In the U.S., Mother Nature continues to bring relentless rain and dangerous flooding across the South. Flood watches are in effect for millions of people yet again this morning, from Louisiana to Georgia. It comes after hundreds of homes were flooded out in Louisiana alone. Look at this video now showing the high water levels left behind by the remnants of Tropical Storm Arthur. Officials in Texas now say that the heavy rains have turned deadly after several days of downpours. Our NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson is in Louisiana with more on the impact of this severe weather. Priscilla, good morning.
Yeah, Jessica, good morning. At least 3 tornadoes reportedly touched down across Mississippi and Louisiana as a result of this storm. And you can see some of that damage here just behind me. The side of this building completely sheared off. You've got cinder blocks and debris everywhere. And this is some of what folks are seeing. But the real threat has been the heavy rain and the flooding. We know now of at least 1 fatality in Mississippi, a county road worker who was killed while cleaning some of the storm's aftermath. But in Louisiana, there has been a disaster declaration declared. More than 180 homes flooded, according to the National Weather Service. A lot of that having to do with some areas receiving roughly 2 feet of rain, just an incredible amount of rain. And all of this was the remnants, much of this was the remnants of Tropical Storm Arthur, even though it is no longer a tropical storm, continuing to see some rain and some of the impacts of that here. And so really just a lot going on, dramatic images of water rescues taking place across Mississippi. We saw a mobile home park that was nearly submerged. There were residents in another area that were told to evacuate after those fast-moving floodwaters moved in. And even around New Orleans, a crocodile in the water just steps from people's homes in the suburbs here. So just really dramatic things that we're seeing as a result of this flooding. And there is still a threat. In Mississippi, there is the Anchor Lake Dam that officials say is in danger of failing. They are monitoring it very closely and say if there is any more rainfall, it could be a serious problem there. They've already ordered some evacuations and just are continuing to urge people to be weather aware, to be vigilant, to be cautious, because this may not be over just yet.
Priscilla Thompson, thank you. And with that, more flooding risk and severe weather is this weekend. It's on the way. Let's take a look now at your Morning News Now weather. Meteorologist Andrea Romero joins us now. Andrea, good morning. What do we have in store?
Good morning, Jessica. And we do have more wicked weather, you can say, in store for the south, east across the country, across the Gulf Coast. We're looking at more rain as the remnants of Tropical Storm Arthur continue to move offshore, but is still trapped in the area, some of that moisture. And we can see today, this morning, we have some rainfall extending along the mid-Atlantic coast. But of course, our focus today, it will continue to be the southeast, the Gulf Coast. We have over 9 million people, which will be under this flood watch, which extends all the way from Louisiana into Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, even into the northern panhandle. And we're expecting the worst of the rain, where the flash flood risk will be the highest, to definitely be in this area right here, shaded in pink, where the moderate risk. We're expecting hourly rainfall rates of 2 to 3 inches per hour as the remnants of Arthur continue to move off the southeast coast. New downpours will be developing along the slow-moving front, and that will continue into tomorrow even, with that flooding still possible in areas where the heavy rainfall will be falling, especially here of concern, parts of southern Alabama, over here into Louisiana and into close to Pensacola. So we're expecting the rainfall forecast to be an additional 1 to 3 inches. Maybe some areas can even see up to 6 inches of rainfall. Of course, this is all falling over saturated ground, so you don't need a lot to trigger that flash flooding, and that's why we're really concerned that that area hasn't seen the worst yet. Now, we are also expecting a severe threat to be moving into the Central Plains east of the Rockies. Basically, all hazards are on the table as the storm system brings severe weather tomorrow into this area. We're talking about strong gusty winds, damaging hails, and even the possibility of some tornadoes that can develop in that area, and that will be moving into the Midwest for Sunday. The heat alert is the heat is on over in the southern tier of the country. Over 41 million people are impacted by these heat alerts that are issued already for parts of Texas, into Louisiana, even here in parts of South and Central Florida. Look at the temperatures. The heat index values are in the triple digits from Texas all the way into Florida. So we're going to be dealing with that high heat also. And we do have a fire risk out west. So there's a lot of weather going on across the country.
Yeah, a lot to be vigilant about. All right, Andrea, thank you. The streets of New York City turned orange and blue as an estimated 2 million fans turned out to celebrate the Knicks and their historic NBA championship yesterday. But that joyous scene was later clouded by a shooting in Times Square that had tourists running for cover just hours later. Our NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has more on all of this. Sam, good morning.
It was one of the most tightly secured, police-blanketed days in recent New York City memory, and the New York Knicks championship parade went off without a hitch. Unfortunately, a shooting just hours later here in Times Square completely upended what was otherwise a joyous day. A terrifying scene in the heart of Times Square. The sound of gunshots sending people scattering in one of the most congested parts of New York City. Police say one person is in custody and no injuries at this time. The dramatic incident coming just hours after what the NYPD called its biggest planned operation ever. securing Lower Manhattan for the Knicks parade after the team's first title in more than 50 years. A New York crowd coming out by the millions, flooding the streets, with Broadway jammed shoulder to shoulder right along the parade route. Subways teeming and people just trying to sneak a peek. Other fans turned away hours before the parade even began because of crowds. The NYPD says an estimated 2 million people attended with no major incidents. The team stars, including point guard Jalen Brunson, soaking in the moment.
Damn, New York, we really did it, man. We really did it.
The city's euphoria permeated the streets.
The unity, it's unbelievable. We're all New York, we're all Knicks fans.
So often when this city comes together, it is because we are forced to, by a moment of tragedy or adversity. What a gift it is to be brought together by pure, unfiltered joy.
For so many, that joy still remains the sobering reality. Securing the biggest city in the country is never without challenges. According to NYPD, there were officers nearby as the first calls came in about a shooting, and they were able to respond immediately. The suspect is now in custody. As for the New York Knicks parade, 2 million people, only 13 of them taken into custody with 10 arrests. Remarkably successful from a law enforcement standpoint. From Times Square, Sam Brock, NBC News. Back to you.
Sam, thank you. Today, Americans across the country are holding celebrations in honor of Juneteenth. This is the 5th year the holiday has been federally recognized. It commemorates a pivotal moment in our nation's journey toward ending slavery. Constance Jones from NBC Miami takes a closer look at how communities all across South Florida are keeping that history alive.
For more than 160 years, communities across the country have celebrated Juneteenth, a day that marks the end of slavery in the United States. But the holiday is about more than history.
The Juneteenth holiday is the recognition of the beginning of the incorporation of 4 million African Americans finally into the American body politic. And so it's a real wonderful way to celebrate it.
Dr. Tamika Bradley serves as the regional manager of the African American Research Library and Cultural Center in Broward and says many people only recently learned about Juneteenth after it became a federal holiday in 2021. She says it's a time to understand the full American story, including the challenges.
It is a critical marker in this country that marks a point by which we continue to perfect our union. We finally got it right when it came to slavery, and we began the process of incorporating Black people into this body politic. Black men are going to get the right to vote in 1870.
Here in South Florida, the African American Research Library is helping people connect with a community workshop. And this year, that history carries even more weight. Historians say Juneteenth belongs right beside the 4th of July.
Particularly takes on a really interesting flavor this year as we prepare for the 250th anniversary of the United States. I think it's important for us to highlight both of these very interesting pillars in our American chronology.
It's a chance to learn and reflect on the moments in history that helped shape the nation we know today.
Thank you, Constance Jones, for that report. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, showdown in Seattle. Soccer fans getting ready for today's big World Cup match between the U.S. men's national team and Australia. We have all the excitement. But up first, after the break, another legal twist in the murder case against Luigi Mangione. We'll tell you all about it right after this. We're back with a surprising new twist in New York's case against Luigi Mangione. Yesterday, his defense team withdrew plans to use a psychiatric defense in his murder trial for the 2024 killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. It came one day after the judge said the defense planned to argue Mangione was experiencing a, quote, extreme emotional disturbance at the time of the killing. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin has the latest.
This morning, a stunning U-turn for Luigi Mangione. His legal team formally notifying the judge in his state criminal case that the 28-year-old is withdrawing his psychiatric defense. Mangione faces 8 felony charges in New York, including second-degree murder for the shooting death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. If his defense was able to prove extreme emotional disturbance, a possible conviction could have been reduced to first-degree manslaughter. Now, that's off the table.
It might be that as the deadline approached, their expert witness or the records and documents just didn't support the defense they wanted to present.
The filing dropped the same day the court released this transcript from a June 3rd hearing, in which Mangione's lawyer told the court they'd been exploring the psychiatric defense since as far back as September, and also made clear that if a defendant goes with an EED defense, they're essentially admitting publicly that they committed this crime. His lawyer also argued that making the EED defense public prejudices both this case and the federal case because of the extraordinary publicity affecting potential jurors.
Whether it's pleading insanity or extreme emotional distress, either way is a gambit because it requires the defendant to admit to the killing. There's risk involved.
The reversal amounts to another setback for Mangione's defense and comes a month after the court allowed the alleged murder weapon to be admitted as evidence, as well as a notebook prosecutors have described as Mangione's manifesto.
That will be removed!
Still, fierce public attention on the case continues, just months away from Mangione's trial.
Our thanks to Aaron McLaughlin for that report. So let's dive into this more with NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris, who is joining us via Zoom this morning. Misty, good to have you. Mangione's state murder trial is scheduled for September. We're just, 3 months away. So what are the possible reasons that the defense would withdraw its plans just one day after announcing them?
Yeah, so the defense was required to turn over information about their expert reports and records relating to this defense yesterday, and a bunch of stuff was going to be unsealed that related to Luigi Mangione's mental health medical conditions, which now will no longer happen. So it's possible, as Danny pointed out in that piece, that the expert report was not what the defense wanted it to be, that it was not going to support their defense. It's possible that the records were not complete so that they couldn't move forward. It's also possible that Luigi Mangione did not want to go this route. Remember, he is the client, so his lawyers can give him advice, but ultimately it's his decision. And lastly, it could be that the impact it may have on the federal trial was just too much of a risk, so the defense decided to pivot.
I know some people were saying perhaps they couldn't get a medical expert to corroborate that, and I thought, well, how would they not know that before they laid out their plans? But if you're saying things were unsealed yesterday, that kind of makes sense. Now, the psychiatric defense, if successful, could have reduced his potential sentence if he is to get convicted. How unusual is it for the defense to change its strategy at this point in the game?
So the defense can change its strategy up to the day of trial and can even pivot its strategy during trial. But what I do think is interesting here, there was an unsealed hearing that was secret previously from June 3rd. And at that hearing, the defense was asking for more time to get these evaluations done, to speak with experts. So when you think about June 3rd to June 17th, when that other conference took place where we learned about this defense, it's possible, to your point, that they did not have the information that they needed to move forward, or that that expert report was just not something that was going to support this defense. There's lots of different potential things that could have happened behind the scenes.
Now, prosecutors have already said they plan to use evidence from that diary that details Mangione's alleged plans to kill Brian Thompson. It includes some really incriminating thoughts like, quote, whack the CEO at the annual parasitic bean counter invention. Without a psychiatric defense, what are they leaning on here?
Yeah, from the prosecution's perspective, what they're calling the manifesto is one of the strongest for the prosecution and the worst for the defense. So what route could the defense go? Well, state of mind will always be something that the defense can attack. And they could even, as per their withdrawal, they said, we don't intend to use this defense at this time. They could attempt to resurrect it as trial gets closer. The problem with that, though, is that the judge could say, all right, you can argue extreme emotional disturbance, but you can't present any medical testimony. You can't present any medical experts because that deadline has already passed. So they could be in a situation where they're making the argument about extreme emotional disturbance without that medical corroboration, which will be an even more uphill battle than it was previously.
If the trial does start in September, it feels like we're closing in on the timeline here. So what happens next?
There's a lot to be done now. We're talking about everything relating to jury selection, jury questionnaires, and maybe we learn more from filings that come in between now and trial about evidence and about potential legal strategy and motions. But what I think is interesting is something that was brought up at that secret June 3rd conference. By raising this defense, Luigi Mangione is conceding that he actually committed the crime. Now, they could take another approach at trial, but from the perspective of how high profile this case is, and now that's out there in the public, man, jury selection was going to be tough before, but it's going to be even more of a challenge now. So a lot to watch in this case.
Right. Not to mention the whole world has really been watching this case. Misty Maris, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate it. Coming up, Moscow under fire, Ukraine launching its largest attack on Russia's capital since the war began. We'll bring you the very latest next on Morning News Now. We're back with news that Ukraine has launched what appears to be its biggest attack on Moscow since Russia's invasion began more than 4 years ago. Video shows black billowing smoke and flames over Moscow as waves of Ukrainian drones hit a major oil refinery in the city for a second time this week. That also led to flights being disrupted in that area. NBC News international correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us now with the latest. Claudio, good morning. These latest attacks on Moscow come days after Russian strikes sparked a large fire at a 1,000-year-old monastery in the Ukrainian capital city of Kyiv. It is, of course, one of Ukraine's most important religious and cultural landmarks. The new attacks in Moscow are being seen as revenge. What can you tell us on that?
Good morning, Jessica. Well, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, made it very clear that this unprecedented drones attack on Russia and Moscow was in retaliation to that missile and drone attack by Russia on the capital, Kyiv, where also, as you mentioned, that monastery was damaged. It caused the drones attack caused fire there. This is one of the holiest sites in the Orthodox Christianity, on Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And in a note to reporters, President Zelensky even said something like, "If Kyiv burns, then Moscow will burn." Jessica.
The attacks are coming, Claudio, during a precarious, very uncertain time for the Kremlin, which is facing growing discontent with Russian President Vladimir Putin's leadership and the overall handling of the war with Ukraine. What should we know about that?
Well, Jessica, the impact that this unprecedented attack on Moscow, on Russia, but Moscow in particular had is probably goes well beyond the 17 people that were injured, according to the governor of the region around Moscow, and also of the damage on the infrastructure and buildings, including that oil refinery you saw. This probably the biggest impact was psychological on Russians, on civilians in Moscow, because they could see from very far away from that location of the refinery that those huge black plumes of smoke rising over the city. And that's where probably they realized that the war in Ukraine is no longer a faraway affair. It has arrived in their backyard. And that could potentially mean a drop in popularity, not only for the war in Ukraine, but also for President Putin, Jessica.
And clearly, Ukraine is not backing down. We're also learning that the European Union is trying to open a line of communication with Russia so it's not sidelined in any potential talks to end the war. What's the latest there?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, European leaders, since the start of the war, they've lamented the fact that they've been completely cut out of any diplomatic approach to try to end this war in Ukraine, especially by President Trump, who's basically always kept them out of any diplomatic relations with Putin and Zelensky. Zelensky has been very close to the European leaders, but the president of the U.S. is not. Now, he's actually been very critical of them. Now, the EU is waking up now to the fact that they do need to create a channel of communication with Russia. And there are reports that Antonio Costa, the European Council president, may be given the role of some sort of mediator that will mediate for the EU and Russia. This is not confirmed, but certainly things are moving diplomatically on that front, Jessica.
4 years later. All right, Claudio Lavanga, thanks so much. After an action-packed week in the World Cup, the U.S. men's national team is gearing up for its second match of the group stage this morning. Team USA is off to a strong start after pummeling Paraguay 4-1 in their first match of the tournament. They'll look to maintain that form later today when they face off against the Socceroos of Australia. NBC News national correspondent Morgan Chesky is tracking all the buzz that is already building. Morgan, good morning.
Hey, good morning. And the U.S. men's national team certainly made an absolute statement, scoring a record 4 goals in front of that hometown crowd. Now they're looking to do it again, this time up in Seattle. And the fans there are more than ready to cheer them on.
With the World Cup now in full swing and the U.S. men's team off to a stellar start, eager American fans only have one thing left to say. USA! USA! Seattle's Lumen Field ready for battle. And a high noon face-off between Team USA and Australia.
There it is, folks, where the magic will be happening against Australia.
USA! USA! Fans already swarming the city with Seattle's famed Puget Sound, sporting the beloved stars and stripes however they can. Aussie! Right alongside some die-hard Aussies.
Super pumped to see Australia win another game and try to find some Starbucks coffee.
But coffee may be easier than a victory after watching the U.S. dismantle Paraguay 4-1. 2 of those goals coming from striker Folarin Balogun, part of a battle-tested squad led by superstar Christian Pulisic, on the mend from a calf injury in Game 1.
Having a World Cup on home soil, it really is something special for us.
The U.S. hoping and expecting to surpass their last World Cup on home soil, reaching the round of 16 back in 1994.
Do you believe Game 1 silenced the doubters?
Game 1 may not have silenced the doubters, but it actually raised the bar of expectations.
Whenever you see kids walking around with your jersey on it or with your team's jersey on it, it definitely, it's something, it's a feeling that you can't really describe.
Fan fervor building to a fever pitch, with World Cup dreams alive and well.
We're going to take it 2-0 U.S. Go USA!
That'll be a good game, I reckon.
Is there any substitute for that hometown crowd?
There's no substitute for playing a World Cup in your backyard. It's as good as it gets.
As good as it gets is right, and we do have an update this morning. The U.S. men's coach says that Christian Pulisic is much better than he was after last Friday's match, but he would not say if he'll be able to face Australia at high noon today. And keep in mind that this is a bit of a pivotal match. The winner would be the favorite to win the group, which generally means an easier opponent for the next round.
Morgan, you read my mind. I was just going to ask you what you think will happen with Christian Pulisic today. We want to see him play, but those calf injuries can be nasty. Game 3 p.m. Eastern today. It gives this whole crew just enough time to get a good nap, get some of that coffee, and then cheer on the USA.
There you go. Exactly. Fingers crossed.
Thanks, Morgan. Coming up, incredible findings that could save the lives of millions of women. A new study crediting a common vaccine for virtually eliminating deaths from cervical cancer. What doctors want you to know next on Morning News Now. We're back with a landmark medical study about the effectiveness of the HPV vaccine. According to some new research, children in England who got the shot between the ages of 12 and 13 have a near zero risk of dying from cervical cancer before they turn 30. Health officials say it's one of the leading causes of cancer death worldwide, but also highly preventable. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins me now with more on this research. Dr. Patel, good morning. This particular study was funded by Cancer Research UK, which is the world's largest cancer charity organization. Walk me through the highlights of what they found.
Yeah, Jessica, it's pretty stunning because it's not often you can say that you have zero deaths, but that's exactly what this study looked at. UK has been starting to do HPV vaccination since 2008. So now we have a sufficient quantity of data, as you mentioned, boys and girls that had been vaccinated at recommended ages as early as 9 years old that have now had their 2 or, as if they're older, 3-dose catch-up vaccinations. And they found, literally, as you just said, 0 deaths from that cohort that got that kind of earlier vaccine, 2 shots. 0 deaths and a reduction. This builds on earlier data from that same cohort that showed an 83 to 94% reduction in incidence of cancers, early lesions, as well as high-grade cancers. And just as a reminder, this is the UK. It's a little different than the US. In the United States, we see 4,000 deaths annually still, Jessica. So 0 deaths from a cohort that's vaccinated is pretty groundbreaking news.
Now, as you point out, this study happened in the UK, but there's so much we can take away from it here in the U.S. What are some of those major headlines that we can walk away with today?
Yeah, in addition to the health benefits, a couple of headlines. The UK just has a higher cervical cancer vaccination rate overall. Approximately 80 to 82% of the recommended population has had vaccination, and that compares with a lower 62 to 65% of the United States vaccination for HPV. But here's the good news, Jessica. If we can get those vaccination rates up, our vaccine is actually better than what has been distributed in the UK. The UK has a bivalent vaccine. Think of it as unlocking 2 of the high-risk HPV viruses. Our vaccine, Gardasil 9, that we use in the United States, unlocks 9 of those viruses. So we have better protection, and you would imagine if we can improve those vaccine numbers, we could have even dramatic reductions, 0 deaths, plus even higher reductions in those incidents of cancers.
So we know that more than 90% of cervical cancers in the U.S. are likely caused by HPV, according to the CDC. So who should think about getting the vaccine? And Dr. Patel, when is the best time? What is the best age to get it?
Yeah, and this is where I think that there's a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation. So it's standard recommendation to start HPV. It's a 2-dose start at the ages of 9, and that's for boys and girls. We usually talk to boys and girls between the ages of 9 and 12 about initiating that vaccine series. And then we have, but don't worry, if you haven't had your children or you yourself haven't been vaccinated, talk to your doctor. We can see and we can vaccinate up to the ages of 45 and beyond, even with shared decision making. And the reason I want to stress boys and girls, women and men, is because men also carry HPV, can experience anal and oral cancers. We're seeing an increase actually in some of the incidents in pockets of the country. So in addition to the cancer screening itself, we also do recommend Pap screening. So that's getting a Pap smear every 3 to 5 years, depending on your age. There's also good news for women. There's a self-collection Pap test that can be done safely in your home. Ask your doctors about it, approved by the FDA recently. And then in addition, all the basics, Jessica, condom use, talking to women and girls about what they can do around proper sexual behavior so that they can also make sure that they limit any spread. And that includes, again, boys and men too.
We do know that HPV is one of the most common infections that one can get. How important is it to underscore the importance of that screening? As you mentioned, 3 to 5 years. I know that when I was younger, and for women who are younger, often their doctors will say every year until they get to a certain age. Let's talk about that screening again.
Yeah, so let's just reinforce the screening that we do recommend. So I think that you're right. And I have even heard doctors say, like, let's do this every year. And I think that's because they often peg it to an annual exam. But I think that the most important thing is that you can start your HPV vaccine, as we mentioned, and then also talk about routine screenings every 3 to 5 years. That's recent guidelines. And then condom use as well as sexual education. So those are the 3 kind of pillars of preventing cervical cancer. And remember, this is all preventable, especially on top of that vaccine data that we just started with, Jessica.
And we know as women, the Pap smear is not necessarily pleasant, but it is so important and can really save you a lot of pain and, like you said, potentially even death. Dr. Kavita Patel, thanks so much for shedding some light on this morning. Coming up is a historic day in Chicago. The Obama Presidential Center officially opens its doors to the public today. And to celebrate, our own Craig Melvin sat down with the former commander-in-chief himself for a candid conversation on where the Obamas came from and where the nation goes next. Stay with us. We are ending this hour in Chicago, where the Obama Presidential Center will officially open to the public later today. A star-studded ceremony was held yesterday to christen the new 19-acre campus on the city's south side that has been a labor of love for the former president. Ahead of the opening, NBC Today co-anchor Craig Melvin traveled to Chicago to speak with Mr. Obama, who told him that the center is less about what he did in the past and more about what our nation does in the future. Here is some of that conversation.
When the Obama Presidential Center opens, those first ticket holders who come into this space, what are you going to be feeling in that moment?
So I'll feel a lot of gratitude. The degree to which people invested in Michelle and me and what we were trying to do. But I really am hoping that it's less an act of nostalgia and that it's more an inspiration for us moving forward. To get a sense of, all right, this was a small chapter in America's ongoing journey to perfect its union.
The Obama Presidential Center sprawls across Jackson Park on Chicago's South Side, just blocks from where Michelle Obama grew up, in the city where Barack Obama's political career was born. It features a 225-foot-tall tower housing the Obama Presidential Museum, a public forum, a vegetable garden, plus green spaces, and a branch of the Chicago Public Library where we spoke. I've walked the property, walked the space. 6 or 7 stories, like 19 acres outside of Chicago, more than $800 million. They're presidential libraries, and then there's this.
I didn't want to build a mausoleum.
Yeah.
I'm too young for that. I really did want to think of this as a center, a hub for the next generation being inspired, motivated, but also getting help and getting resources to carry that baton further.
The new museum traces Obama's rise and time in office. It highlights his accomplishments, but also documents where the former president feels his administration fell short. There's even a section dedicated to his work on the Iran nuclear deal, a deal recently scrapped and replaced with a new one by President Trump. What do you make of what we know about the deal so far?
I am very happy to see a ceasefire, and I'm hopeful that it holds. But in terms of what was the original rationale for this war, which was there was a deal in place in which Iran had agreed not to develop nuclear weapons. This administration, or a prior version of this administration, pulled out of it, which caused then Iran to develop more nuclear capacity. We've now fought a war, spent billions and billions of dollars, put an enormous strain on our military. A lot of people have died. And it feels like we're back where we were before we started the war, except maybe a little bit worse, awfully.
I'll give you a couple headlines. The Obama Center opens as a time warp to an old political order. With his new museum, Obama offers a trip to a parallel America. What do you make of that sentiment? That this is a reminder of what America was?
Well, I think it's true, and I think it's a reminder of what America is. There's no doubt that we are going through a period right now of disruption, polarization. That's caused, I think, people to feel as if our democracy, our civic habits and virtues, our shared understanding of how we treat each other has started to crumble. On the other hand, when I travel across the country today, not just when I was president, you still see that sense of decency with people. You still see folks helping each other and looking out for their neighbors. I'm glad that this center and this library and the museum, this entire campus, reminds people not of the past, but reminds people of what's inside all of us. We all have the capacity for looking out for each other. We all have the capacity to feel a civic responsibility to make sure our government works. We all play a part in assuring that our elected officials are accountable. That's not something that I think we can afford to suggest is behind us.
Do you think in the current climate that someone like you, with your background and your story, do you think that you could break through now the same way you did back in 07, 08?
I do think it's harder because of the nature of your business, the media. It's more splintered. When I gave that speech at the convention,
there is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America.
Suddenly I'm a national figure because all the networks covered it. And the challenge we now have is that the media is so splintered that people who are doing excellent work, people who are just as gifted or in some cases more gifted than I am to communicate people's aspirations, hopes, and dreams, who are really doing great work at state and local levels, it's harder for them to break through. I think we're in a transition period where there are a lot of Barack and Michelle Obamas out there doing cool stuff, but our politics hasn't quite given them the space platform yet. Okay. Media hasn't shined a spotlight on them yet.
At his side through 8 years in office and everything else, former First Lady Michelle Obama. Her touch felt throughout the center, from the gowns to the garden to that sledding hill that she didn't have when she was a little girl. Michelle Obama's fingerprints are all over this place.
All over this place.
What do you want folks who come here to take away with regard to her legacy?
That she was a full partner, that her journey is just as improbable as mine. She grew up, like I said, 10 blocks from here in her aunt's house because her parents didn't own the house. And that little girl, Michelle Obama, ended up being the First Lady of the United States and was as powerful an ambassador for America and occupied that office with as much warmth and class and dignity and beauty as anybody could.
Something else near and dear to the former president's heart, sports. One of his favorite exhibits includes the unique memorabilia he's collected over the years. He actually had custom high tops that he wore while he played basketball at the White House. Known to shoot a few hoops himself during his time in office, his center even includes an NBA regulation-sized basketball court. So it was no surprise to hear he was glued to the recent NBA Finals. But, Mr. President, all those years in office, you were talking about hope and change, and who knew that you were talking about the New York Knicks?
Listen, my first real basketball hero was Walt Clyde Frazier, and I loved those 70s Knicks, and I've got a lot of friends from New York, and I know a lot of long-suffering fans.
Yes.
That I could not be happier for. So kudos to them. What an incredible run. Captain Brunson put them on their shoulders.
But perhaps the most meaningful part of the center is an exhibit that focuses on the letters Obama received from the public while in office. I understand that one of your favorite parts is this multimedia display, and it shows letters.
Yeah.
Some of the letters every night that you would send.
Right. 10 letters a day.
10 letters a day.
Yeah. Out of the 40,000 we were getting.
There was one in particular that caught my attention. There's a 7-year-old girl. Her name's Emily, and when she wrote the letter, she was the same age as Sasha. She lost her mom to cancer. Yeah. She said that before her mom died, she was able to go in her wheelchair and vote for you in 2008. And you wrote her back, of course, and you said that you wrote about losing your mom too at an early age and how that shaped you. She heard that her letter was featured here in the library, and she wanted to send a message.
I feel a lot of emotions right now, mainly peace and pride, knowing that my mother's legacy continues to live on, not only through myself, but now at the Obama Presidential Center. I also feel very grateful to be able to report back 17 years later, and I'm happy to say that I was able to graduate college with a BSN and have since become a registered nurse. I would like to take this opportunity also to thank President Barack Obama for everything he has done, as well as always reminding me to dream big dreams.
Oh, well, all right. So, like, I can tell that's a setup, but I appreciate it. What a wonderful message. You know, those letters, those letters would come every night. And what they helped me do was to just remind me that I used to tell my staff, you run elections and get elected, but the end point is, are you delivering something to make the lives of folks a little bit better who sent you? And those letters reminded me of that. Some of my favorite letters were from Republicans who would say, I didn't vote for you, I don't agree with anything you're doing, but you seem like a good dad. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And what that video that you just showed me speaks to, I hope when people come here, they're not just fixated on some speech I'm giving, not just fixated on Michelle's dresses. More than anything, as you've seen in these exhibits, you'll hear the voices of the American people. And that, I think, will give you encouragement. That makes you feel that the idea of America as a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, raucous, noisy democracy, that can work. I think their voices are what makes you feel confident in the future.
Our thanks to Craig Melvin for that report. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now, but the news continues right now. Good morning and happy Friday. You made it to the end of the work week. I'm Jessica Layton in for Joe and Savannah today. Right now on Morning News Now, unrelenting days of wild weather soaking the deep south. Dangerous flash floods, even multiple tornadoes slamming communities along the Gulf Coast as what's left of Tropical Storm Arthur trudges east. So, what does Mother Nature have in store for your first official weekend of summer? Your full forecast is in just a moment. Also this morning, deal or no deal, a potential new snag in President Trump's push for peace in the Middle East. Why the vice president abruptly pulled out of a planned trip abroad to meet the Iranian leaders ahead of today's pivotal negotiations. Plus, it was a red letter day here in New York that looked a lot more orange and blue. Everything you may have missed from yesterday's Knicks victory parade as the star-filled squad rides straight into the history books. Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, Team USA is once again getting ready for a shot at World Cup glory. But do they have what it takes to beat Australia? We have a full preview later in the hour. That game today, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Cannot wait. But let's start this hour with the dangerous flooding impacting states across the southeast. This morning, the Gulf Coast is completely soaked after days of heavy rain from the remnants of Tropical Storm Arthur. The lingering storms have brought the risk of life-threatening floods and even spawned several tornadoes. We're going to bring you a full look at the forecast in just a minute, but we begin with NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson in Louisiana with the very latest. Priscilla, good morning.
At least 3 reported tornadoes touched down across the south. Look at this damage. You have the side of this building entirely sheared off. Some workers up early this morning getting to work here. But the real threat has been the heavy rain and the flooding. And it's not over just yet. This morning, life-threatening flooding across the south.
This is the worst it's ever flooded here, y'all.
A county worker killed in Mississippi while cleaning up after the storm. The system spawning multiple twisters, including just outside New Orleans. A state of emergency declared in Louisiana after nearly 2 feet of rain flooded more than 180 homes. Heavy rain soaking the Gulf Coast, triggering rescues in multiple states, including Perkinston, Mississippi, where a trailer park was nearly submerged.
Pretty much we lost everything.
An hour south in Picayune, residents urged to evacuate as their homes were cut off by fast-moving floodwaters.
Yeah, we've already left. It's probably the highest I've ever seen it over here.
The severe weather all from the aftermath of Arthur, which made landfall in Texas this week as the first named storm of the season. The storm's relentless rain pushing rivers past their banks, with other dangers lurking in the water, too. The storm also producing blinding winds, gusting up to 66 miles per hour. The incredible force captured on a doorbell camera in Louisiana, flipping over a boat. In New Orleans, Vivian Cerruti describing what happened when she woke up to tornado sirens blaring.
It was really scary because our door just flew open and I couldn't close it.
A mangled mess of trees and power lines left behind there. Officials continue to urge residents to take precautions.
Don't go anywhere near the power lines. Do not cross the road that has running water across it.
And a glimmer of good news, officials in Mississippi are still monitoring this Anchor Lake Dam, which they had said could potentially fail if they get more rainfall. But right now, officials are saying that they have high confidence in the integrity of that dam, allowing people to go back into their homes who had evacuated, but still urging people to be weather aware and vigilant. Back to you.
All right, Priscilla Thompson, thank you. For more on the severe storms and a look at the weekend forecast, let's look at your morning news now. Weather meteorologist Andrea Romero joins us now. Andrea, the threat of everything still exists.
Yes, we're still talking about that tropical moisture that continues to impact the southeast and the Gulf Coast. Right now, we are also seeing some of that moisture that's riding up here along the mid-Atlantic coast as the remnants of Tropical Storm Arthur continue to begin to move offshore in this location. But we have a stationary front that's basically trapping this moisture in this area. We're seeing a lot of convergence with drier air moving in from the north. So we have still that activity expected throughout the day today. So we're expecting the moisture to begin to move off the southeast coast. However, the downpours will still be developing along this slow-moving front today and into tomorrow. So these conditions will persist. Of course, we're not talking about the same amount of rainfall that we had yesterday, where we saw double-digit rainfall amounts, but the ground is already saturated, so we don't need a lot of rainfall for some flash flooding to occur. So we have over 9 million people at risk through tomorrow morning, with rainfall rates of 2 to 3 inches per hour all the way from Louisiana into the Florida Panhandle, accumulations of 1 to 3, possibly 4 to 6 inches. And we also have a severe weather threat that's going to be setting up for tomorrow here along the central and southern plains. Everything is basically on the table. Wind gusts, damaging hail, even the possibility of tornadoes as the storm system develops and brings torrential downpours tomorrow night to this area. Also, maybe some flash flooding will be impacting this location. And then this threat will move on into the Midwest by Sunday. Now, the heat is on along the southern tier of the country. We have these heat advisories up. We have heat index values in the triple digits, especially in southern Texas. Look at that. The heat index in Brownsville for today, 115. So we have a fire risk out west. We have sunny skies over here in the Midwest today. Of course, out on Long Island, we're looking at perfect conditions for the U.S. Open. A little bit windy, yes, but we're expecting sunshine for Saturday and Sunday and temperatures in the upper 70s. And of course, the Father's Day forecast, a real winter up here in the Northeast, but we do have that threat of flooding over parts of the Midwest. Jessica, back to you.
Always nice on Father's Day in the Northeast. Thank you, Andrea. Well, the next round of peace talks with Iran was set to begin later today after President Trump signed a deal to end the war, kickstarting a 60-day negotiating window. But overnight, Vice President J.D. Vance abruptly postponed a planned trip to meet with Iranian leaders in Switzerland. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us now from the White House with all the very latest on that. Gabe, good morning.
Jessica, while the White House defends the agreement, continued fighting in Lebanon is jeopardizing new talks this morning. That as Israel overnight attacked dozens of targets after accusing Iran-backed Hezbollah of violating the ceasefire. Overnight, Vice President Vance scrapping plans to travel to Switzerland to meet with Iranian negotiators for the next round of peace talks. The abrupt cancellation coming after President Trump signed a preliminary deal that could end the war. The White House saying logistics of these negotiations have never been simple or predictable.
The president's peace plan in Iran is already bearing real fruits for the American people.
Just hours earlier, the vice president touting falling gas prices that rose dramatically after the president started the war, also forcefully pushing back on critics of the agreement, including those in Israel.
Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel. And anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the president of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in.
The memorandum of understanding would allow Iran to start selling oil again, potentially get billions of dollars in unfrozen assets down the line, and eventually have access to a $300 billion reconstruction fund created by Iran's neighbors.
The only way that they would ever get any benefit of the bargain is if they comply fully and change their behavior.
Still, unfreezing Iranian funds is something President Trump had previously slammed the Obama administration for doing. Back in April, he posted that under a new deal, no money will exchange hands in any way, shape, or form. Now,
it's not our money, it's their money, and we froze it. At a certain point in time, I guess we're going to have to give it back.
The agreement sparking backlash, even from some Republicans.
It's certainly not what we had hoped for going in.
If we give billions of dollars to Iran, that money will be used to murder Americans.
Still, the president, in a new interview with Axios, was asked what he learned about the limits of his power during the Iran conflict.
There are no limits. No, not. I haven't learned that lesson yet. I know there are, but, there are no limits. We defeated them totally militarily.
Now, it's still possible these talks happen, but at this point, it's still unclear when. Now, Israel says it targeted Hezbollah overnight in Lebanon after 4 of its soldiers were killed. Lebanese health officials say at least 18 people were killed in the attacks. Now, a diplomat with knowledge of the situation tells NBC News that Iran has asked for guarantees that hostilities in Lebanon will end, and that mediators are currently working to resolve the issue. Jessica?
All right, Gabe, thank you. So there's a lot of layers going on here. Let's bring in NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley, who is in Tel Aviv for us right now. Matt, good morning. It's only been a few days since the U.S. and Iran agreed to that deal that would wind down the war and fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz. New Israeli strikes in Lebanon, though, are now casting doubts on the agreement to end the war. What do we need to know about those new attacks?
Well, it comes in retaliation from what the Israelis say were attacks by Hezbollah, which is an Iran-backed militia in Lebanon that killed 4 Israeli servicemen, including a senior officer in southern Lebanon. Now, the Israelis have said that they've attacked dozens of what they say are Hezbollah locations in the Bekaa Valley. That's in the eastern part of Lebanon. But so far, and this is important, they haven't yet struck in the area around Beirut. Several times in the past, couple of years, but especially in the past couple of weeks where we're talking about this memorandum and these negotiations, Israeli strikes against Beirut and the areas around it have elicited really strong reactions from Tehran, who have basically said that whenever Israel has attacked Beirut or north of the southern part of Lebanon, they will strike Israel directly, and that's exactly what they've done. So, if Israel continues to escalate its fight against Hezbollah, and Israel is very, very angry because of these deaths of these servicemen, then that could really put the entire ceasefire in jeopardy.
Matt, as we've been reporting all morning, Vice President Vance was originally set to go to Switzerland for formal ceremony on the agreement. With the talks now on hold, walk us through the key long-term issues that could potentially hinder the efforts to finally end this conflict.
Well, I mean, the main issue here is the one we were just discussing, Lebanon. That has the biggest potential to totally sabotage this deal and all of the negotiations that are supposed to be happening over the next 60 days. The problem here is that Iran had made it clear that they think that the treaty means that Israel is supposed to withdraw its forces from southern Lebanon. The Israelis say that's not really part of the deal. And you can see in the document, in that memorandum of understanding, it doesn't explicitly call on Israel to withdraw. Hezbollah is a proxy group of Iran, and Iran is very, very protective of Hezbollah. It's their main sort of cat's paw against the Israelis. And in the past, we've seen Iran actually directly attacking Israel in order to protect Hezbollah. So there are a lot of moving parts here. They're interconnected, and if one thing slips, it could really send the whole situation reeling back toward war. It would be very dangerous for everybody in the region.
We know in that statement released last night by Iran's supreme leader, he said he, quote, held a different view on the agreement but still approved it. What does that mean, and what is Iran now looking to get out of the deal?
I mean, the question about holding a different view, that could mean just about anything in the agreement. But the fact is that this agreement is hugely beneficial for Iran. It has really upfront huge financial incentives, including access to hundreds of billions of dollars in what could become sort of like war reparations or a rebuilding fund. But the fact is that for the Iranians, these negotiations now seem to be entirely contingent upon what happens in Lebanon. And that means that Israel, which had no role in the negotiations leading up to this, has kind of a kingmaker position here. It's Israel who can decide whether or not this ceasefire goes through or whether or not there are any future negotiations based solely on how it behaves toward Hezbollah. So it's a very dangerous situation, and that's why we're starting to see real frustration from the White House, from J.D. Vance, and toward Donald Trump. J.D. Vance, the vice president, gave some really strong language toward the Israeli leadership yesterday. We heard the same kind of talk from President Trump. It was extraordinary to hear, and it just goes to show that Israel and Hezbollah now hold a lot of the cards.
Yeah, a lot of power there. All right, Matt, thanks so much. 3 American heroes are the newest recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor. President Trump presented the veterans with the nation's highest honor yesterday, all of them leaders on the battlefield. And one man is being recognized for his courageous actions during a Taliban ambush, risking his own life to save one of his fellow soldiers. NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Kuby has those details.
The commander-in-chief presenting the Medal of Honor to 3 veterans for going above and beyond the call of duty.
These are great men, great people.
Marine Corps Major James Capers and the late Colonel John Ripley for heroic actions in Vietnam. And retired Army Major Nick Dockery, who while on a mission at a remote combat outpost in Afghanistan, led his men in repelling a massive Taliban ambush.
We were ambushed and we responded with the way that was most fitting.
Specialist Evan Baum was by Dockery's side.
I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for Nick and his decision making.
They fought more than 100 Taliban in close combat for more than 4 hours. Major Dockery shielded a fellow soldier from an enemy grenade, risking his life by repeatedly running across an open field to help his men when a blast hit them all. Suddenly, he realized Sergeant Jack Hansborough was missing.
The Taliban were trying to drag Hansborough away. And Nick took them out and was able to pull Hansborough back. Hansborough just falls like a sack of potatoes. So Nick begins, he takes his kit off and starts doing CPR.
While Dockery saved Hansborough's life, he says his fellow soldiers were the heroes that day.
Do you consider yourself a hero?
Heroism is on the battlefield. There are heroic actions that happen all the time. Can I see why people thought that things that I did was heroic? Certainly. But do I think the collective title hero is appropriate? I would say no.
A nation honoring his courage. Courtney Kuby, NBC News, Washington.
There's an urgent manhunt in Kansas City underway right now for the 22-year-old suspect in a spree of deadly highway shootings Tuesday night, which left 1 person killed and 4 others injured. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch has the latest there.
An alleged killer is on the run near Kansas City, considered armed and dangerous.
We know who he is. We have law enforcement agencies, federal, state, and local, all looking for him right now as we speak.
Police urgently searching for 22-year-old Oscar Sanchez Munoz, who they say carried out a shooting spree Tuesday night that left 1 person dead and 4 people injured.
And we heard a boom, boom, and we thought that we had a flat tire.
Alejandro Barbari says he was in an Uber to the Argentina-Algeria World Cup match at Arrowhead Stadium when his driver was suddenly shot.
The driver started screaming, call 911. I got shot. We didn't understand how, when, why.
That shooting, according to police, one of several in quick succession. 3 adults and 1 teen injured.
Victims all indicated that they were driving down the highway or roadway when 1 or more shots were fired into their vehicles.
Meanwhile, police say another man who was shot died. Investigators say they quickly identified Sanchez Munoz as a suspect and surrounded a house believing he was inside. But after a standoff, the home went up in flames, and Sanchez Munoz was never found inside. Police say he remains at large.
If anyone sees this subject, call 911 immediately.
Jesse Kirsch, NBC News.
If you ever needed proof that New York cares about their Knicks, All you had to do was look at their historic championship parade. Check this out. The Knicks getting quite the superhero celebration yesterday to praise their recent NBA title. The championship meant a lot to New Yorkers who haven't seen their Knicks win it all since 1973. Police say more than 2 million people lined the Canyon of Heroes in Lower Manhattan to show their support. Quickly became a sea of orange and blue, with fans hoping to get a glimpse of the players and the iconic Larry O'Brien trophy. After the parade, the team was presented with keys to the city. Needless to say, it was a day that will live on forever in the heart of Knicks fans. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, showdown in Seattle. Soccer fans getting ready for today's big match between the U.S. and Australia. We have all the excitement. But up first, after the break, another legal twist in the murder case against Luigi Mangione. Stay with us. We're back with a surprising new twist in New York's case against Luigi Mangione. Yesterday, his defense team withdrew plans to use a psychiatric defense in his murder trial for the 2024 killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. It came one day after the judge said the defense planned to argue Mangione was experiencing a, quote, extreme emotional disturbance at the time of the killing. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin has the latest.
This morning, a stunning U-turn for Luigi Mangione. His legal team formally notifying the judge in his state criminal case that the 28-year-old is withdrawing his psychiatric defense. Mangione faces 8 felony charges in New York, including second-degree murder for the shooting death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. If his defense was able to prove extreme emotional disturbance, a possible conviction could have been reduced to first-degree manslaughter. Now, that's off the table.
It might be that as the deadline approached, their expert witness or the records and documents just didn't support the defense they wanted to present.
The filing dropped the same day the court released this transcript from a June 3rd hearing, in which Mangione's lawyer told the court they'd been exploring the psychiatric defense since as far back as September, and also made clear that if a defendant goes with an EED defense, they're essentially admitting publicly that they committed this crime. His lawyer also argued that making the EED defense public prejudices both this case and the federal case because of the extraordinary publicity affecting potential jurors.
Whether it's pleading insanity or extreme emotional distress, either way is a gambit because it requires the defendant to admit to the killing. There's risk involved.
The reversal amounts to another setback for Mangione's defense and comes a month after the court allowed the alleged murder weapon to be admitted as evidence, as well as a notebook prosecutors have described as Mangione's manifesto.
That will be removed!
Still, fierce public attention on the case continues, just months away from Mangione's trial.
Our thanks to Erin McLaughlin for that report. So let's dive into this more with NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris, who is joining us via Zoom this morning. Misty, good to have you. Mangione's state murder trial is scheduled for September. We're just, 3 months away. So what are the possible reasons that the defense would withdraw its plans just one day after announcing them?
Yeah, so the defense was required to turn over information about their expert reports and records relating to this defense yesterday, and a bunch of stuff was going to be unsealed that related to Luigi Mangione's mental health medical conditions, which now will no longer happen. So it's possible, as Danny pointed out in that piece, that the expert report was not what the defense wanted it to be, that it was not going to support their defense. It's possible that the records were not complete so that they couldn't move forward. It's also possible that Luigi Mangione did not want to go this route. Remember, he is the client, so his lawyers can give him advice, but ultimately it's his decision. And lastly, it could be that the impact it may have on the federal trial was just too much of a risk, so the defense decided to pivot.
I know some people were saying perhaps they couldn't get a medical expert to corroborate that, and I thought, well, how would they not know that before they laid out their plans? But if you're saying things were unsealed yesterday, that kind of makes sense. Now, the psychiatric defense, if successful, could have reduced his potential sentence if he is to get convicted. How unusual is it for the defense to change its strategy at this point in the game?
So the defense can change its strategy up to the day of trial and can even pivot its strategy during trial. But what I do think is interesting here, there was an unsealed hearing that was secret previously from June 3rd. And at that hearing, the defense was asking for more time to get these evaluations done, to speak with experts. So when you think about June 3rd to June 17th, when that other conference took place where we learned about this defense, it's possible, to your point, that they did not have the information that they needed to move forward, or that that expert report was just not something that was going to support this defense. There's lots of different potential things that could have happened behind the scenes.
Now, prosecutors have already said they plan to use evidence from that diary that details Mangione's alleged plans to kill Brian Thompson. It includes some really incriminating thoughts like, quote, whack the CEO at the annual parasitic bean counter invention. Without a psychiatric defense, what are they leaning on here?
Yeah, from the prosecution's perspective, what they're calling the manifesto is one of the strongest for the prosecution and the worst for the defense. So what route could the defense go? Well, state of mind will always be something that the defense can attack. And they could even, as per their withdrawal, they said, we don't intend to use this defense at this time. They could attempt to resurrect it as trial gets closer. The problem with that, though, is that the judge could say, all right, you can argue extreme emotional disturbance, but you can't present any medical testimony. You can't present any medical experts because that deadline has already passed. So they could be in a situation where they're making the argument about extreme emotional disturbance without that medical corroboration, which will be an even more uphill battle than it was previously.
If the trial does start in September, it feels like we're closing in on the timeline here. So what happens next?
There's a lot to be done now. We're talking about everything relating to jury selection, jury questionnaires, and maybe we learn more from filings that come in between now and trial about evidence and about potential legal strategy and motions. But what I think is interesting is something that was brought up at that secret June 3rd conference. By raising this defense, Luigi Mangione is conceding that he actually committed the crime. Now, they could take another approach at trial, but from the perspective of how high profile this case is, and now that's out there in the public, man, jury selection was going to be tough before, but it's going to be even more of a challenge now. So a lot to watch in this case.
Right. Not to mention the whole world has really been watching this case. Misty Maris, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate it. Coming up, Moscow under fire, Ukraine launching its largest attack on Russia's capital since the war began. We'll bring you the very latest next on Morning News Now. We're back with news that Ukraine has launched what appears to be its biggest attack on Moscow since Russia's invasion began more than 4 years ago. Video shows black billowing smoke and flames over Moscow as waves of Ukrainian drones hit a major oil refinery in the city for a second time this week. That also led to flights being disrupted in that area. NBC News international correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us now with the latest. Claudio, good morning. These latest attacks on Moscow come days after Russian strikes sparked a large fire at a 1,000-year-old monastery in the Ukrainian capital city of Kyiv. It is, of course, one of Ukraine's most important religious and cultural landmarks. The new attacks in Moscow are being seen as revenge. What can you tell us on that?
Good morning, Jessica. Well, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, made it very clear that this unprecedented drones attack on Russia and Moscow was in retaliation to that missile and drone attack by Russia on the capital, Kyiv, where also, as you mentioned, that monastery was damaged. It caused the drones attack caused fire there. This is one of the holiest sites in the Orthodox Christianity, on Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And in a note to reporters, President Zelensky even said something like, if Kyiv burns, then Moscow will burn, Jessica.
The attacks are coming, Claudio, during a precarious, very uncertain time for the Kremlin, which is facing growing discontent with Russian President Vladimir Putin's leadership and the overall handling of the war with Ukraine. What should we know about that?
Well, Jessica, the impact that this unprecedented attack on Moscow, on Russia, but Moscow in particular had is probably goes well beyond the 17 people that were injured, according to the governor of the region around Moscow, and also of the damage on the infrastructure and buildings, including that oil refinery you saw. This probably the biggest impact was psychological on Russians, on civilians in Moscow, because they could see from very far away from that location of the refinery that those huge black plumes of smoke rising over the city. And that's where probably they realized that the war in Ukraine is no longer a faraway affair. It has arrived in their backyard. And that could potentially mean a drop in popularity, not only for the war in Ukraine, but also for President Putin, Jessica.
And clearly, Ukraine is not backing down. We're also learning that the European Union is trying to open a line of communication with Russia so it's not sidelined in any potential talks to end the war. What's the latest there?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, European leaders, since the start of the war, they've lamented the fact that they've been completely cut out of any diplomatic approach to try to end this war in Ukraine, especially by President Trump, who's basically always kept them out of any diplomatic relations with Putin and Zelensky. Zelensky has been very close to the European leaders, but the president of the U.S. is not. Now, he's actually been very critical of them. Now, the EU is waking up now to the fact that they do need to create a channel of communication with Russia. And there are reports that Antonio Costa, the European Council president, may be given the role of some sort of mediator that will mediate for the EU and Russia. This is not confirmed, but certainly things are moving diplomatically on that front, Jessica.
4 years later. All right, Claudio Lubanga, thanks so much. After an action-packed week in the World Cup, the U.S. men's national team is gearing up for its second match of the group stage this morning. Team USA is off to a strong start after pummeling Paraguay 4-1 in their first match of the tournament. They'll look to maintain that form later today when they face off against the Socceroos of Australia. NBC News national correspondent Morgan Chesky is tracking all the buzz that is already building. Morgan, good morning.
Hey, good morning. And the U.S. men's national team certainly made an absolute statement, scoring a record 4 goals in front of that hometown crowd. Now they're looking to do it again, this time up in Seattle, and the fans there are more than ready to cheer them on.
With the World Cup now in full swing and the U.S. men's team off to a stellar start, eager American fans only have one thing left to say. USA! USA! Seattle's Lumen Field ready for battle, and a high noon face-off between Team USA and Australia.
There it is, folks, where the magic will be happening against Australia.
USA! USA! Fans already swarming the city with Seattle's famed Puget Sound, sporting the beloved stars and stripes however they can. Right alongside some die-hard Aussies.
Super pumped to see Australia win another game and try to find some Starbucks coffee.
But coffee may be easier than a victory after watching the U.S. dismantle Paraguay 4-1. 2 of those goals coming from striker Folarin Balogun, part of a battle-tested squad led by superstar Christian Pulisic, on the mend from a calf injury in Game 1.
Having a World Cup on home soil, it really is something special for us.
The U.S. hoping and expecting to surpass their last World Cup on home soil, reaching the round of 16 back in 1994.
Do you believe Game 1 silenced the doubters?
Game 1 may not have silenced the doubters, but it actually raised the bar of expectations.
Whenever you see kids walking around with your jersey on it or with your team's jersey on it, it definitely, it's something, it's a feeling that you can't really describe.
Fan fervor building to a fever pitch, with World Cup dreams alive and well.
We're going to take it 2-0 U.S. Go USA!
That'll be a good game, I reckon.
Is there any substitute for that hometown crowd?
There's no substitute for playing a World Cup in your backyard. It's as good as it gets.
As good as it gets is right, and we do have an update this morning. The U.S. men's coach says that Christian Pulisic is much better than he was after last Friday's match, but he would not say if he'll be able to face Australia at high noon today. And keep in mind that this is a bit of a pivotal match. The winner would be the favorite to win the group, which generally means an easier opponent for the next round.
Morgan, you read my mind. I was just going to ask you what you think will happen with Christian Pulisic today. We want to see him play, but those calf injuries can be nasty. Yeah, game 3 p.m. Eastern today. It gives this whole crew just enough time to get a good nap, get some of that coffee, and then cheer on the USA.
There you go. Exactly. Fingers crossed.
Thanks, Morgan. Coming up, incredible findings that could save the lives of millions of women. A new study crediting a common vaccine for virtually eliminating deaths from cervical cancer. What doctors want you to know next on Morning News Now. We're back with a landmark medical study about the effectiveness of the HPV vaccine. According to some new research, children in England who got the shot between the ages of 12 and 13 have a near zero risk of dying from cervical cancer before they turn 30. Health officials say it's one of the leading causes of cancer death worldwide, but also highly preventable. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins me now with more on this research. Dr. Patel, good morning. This particular study was funded by Cancer Research UK, which is the world's largest cancer charity organization. Walk me through the highlights of what they found.
Yeah, Jessica, it's pretty stunning because it's not often you can say that you have zero deaths, but that's exactly what this study looked at. UK has been starting to do HPV vaccination since 2008. So now we have a sufficient quantity of data, as you mentioned, boys and girls that had been vaccinated at recommended ages as early as 9 years old that have now had their 2 or, as if they're older, 3-dose catch-up vaccinations. And they found, literally, as you just said, zero deaths from that cohort that got that kind of earlier vaccine, 2 shots, 0 deaths and a reduction. This builds on earlier data from that same cohort that showed an 83 to 94% reduction in incidence of cancers, early lesions, as well as high-grade cancers. And just as a reminder, this is the UK. It's a little different than the US. In the United States, we see 4,000 deaths annually still, Jessica. So 0 deaths from a cohort that's vaccinated is pretty groundbreaking news.
Now, as you point out, this study happened in the UK, but there's so much we can take away from it here in the U.S. What are some of those major headlines that we can walk away with today?
Yeah, in addition to the health benefits, a couple of headlines. The UK just has a higher cervical cancer vaccination rate overall. Approximately 80 to 82% of the recommended population has had vaccination, and that compares with a lower 62 to 65% of the United States vaccination for HPV. But here's the good news, Jessica. If we can get those vaccination rates up, our vaccine is actually better than what has been distributed in the UK. The UK has a bivalent vaccine. Think of it as unlocking 2 of the high-risk HPV viruses. Our vaccine, Gardasil 9, that we use in the United States, unlocks 9 of those viruses. So we have better protection. And you would imagine if we can improve those vaccine numbers, we could have even dramatic reductions, 0 deaths, plus even higher reductions in those incidents of cancers.
So we know that more than 90% of cervical cancers in the U.S. are likely caused by HPV, according to the CDC. So who should think about getting the vaccine? And Dr. Patel, when is the best time? What is the best age to get it?
Yeah, and this is where I think that there's a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation. So it's standard recommendation to start HPV. It's a 2-dose start at the ages of 9, and that's for boys and girls. We usually talk to boys and girls between the ages of 9 and 12 about initiating that vaccine series. And then we have, but don't worry, if you haven't had your children or you yourself haven't been vaccinated, talk to your doctor. We can see and we can vaccinate up to the ages of 45 and beyond, even with shared decision making. And the reason I want to stress boys and girls, women and men, is because men also carry HPV, can experience anal and oral cancers. We're seeing an increase actually in some of the incidents in pockets of the country. So in addition to the cancer screening itself, we also do recommend Pap screening. So that's getting a Pap smear every 3 to 5 years, depending on your age. There's also good news for women. There's a self-collection Pap test that can be done safely in your home. Ask your doctors about it, approved by the FDA recently. And then in addition, all the basics, Jessica, condom use, talking to women and girls about what they can do around proper sexual behavior so that they can also make sure that they limit any spread. And that includes, again, boys and men too.
We do know that HPV is one of the most common infections that one can get. How important is it to underscore the importance of that screening? As you mentioned, 3 to 5 years. I know that when I was younger, and for women who are younger, often their doctors will say every year until they get to a certain age. Let's talk about that screening again.
Yeah, so let's just reinforce the screening that we do recommend. So I think that you're right. And I have even heard doctors say, like, let's do this every year. And I think that's because they often peg it to an annual exam. But I think that the most important thing is that you can start your HPV vaccine, as we mentioned, and then also talk about routine screenings every 3 to 5 years. That's recent guidelines. And then condom use as well as sexual education. So those are the 3 kind of pillars of preventing cervical cancer. And remember, this is all preventable, especially on top of that vaccine data that we just started with, Jessica.
And we know as women, the pap smear is not necessarily pleasant, but it is so important and can really save you a lot of pain and, like you said, potentially even death. Dr. Kavita Patel, thanks so much for shedding some light on this morning. Coming up is a historic day in Chicago. The Obama Presidential Center officially opens its doors to the public today. And to celebrate, our own Craig Melvin sat down with the former commander-in-chief himself for a candid conversation on where the Obamas came from and where the nation goes next. Stay with us. We are ending this hour in Chicago, where the Obama Presidential Center will officially open to the public later today. A star-studded ceremony was held yesterday to christen the new 19-acre campus on the city's south side that has been a labor of love for the former president. Ahead of the opening, NBC Today co-anchor Craig Melvin traveled to Chicago to speak with Mr. Obama, who told him that the center is less about what he did in the past and more about what our nation does in the future. Here is some of that conversation.
When the Obama Presidential Center opens, those first ticket holders who come into this space, what are you going to be feeling in that moment?
So I'll feel a lot of gratitude. The degree to which people invested in Michelle and me and what we were trying to do. But I really am hoping that it's less an act of nostalgia and that it's more an inspiration for us moving forward. To get a sense of, all right, this was a small chapter in America's ongoing journey to perfect its union.
The Obama Presidential Center sprawls across Jackson Park on Chicago's South Side, just blocks from where Michelle Obama grew up, in the city where Barack Obama's political career was born. It features a 225-foot-tall tower housing the Obama Presidential Museum, a public forum, a vegetable garden, plus green spaces, and a branch of the Chicago Public Library where we spoke. I've walked the property, walked the space. 6 or 7 stories, like 19 acres outside of Chicago, more than $800 million. They're presidential libraries, and then there's this.
I didn't want to build a mausoleum.
Yeah.
I'm too young for that. I really did want to think of this as a center, a hub for the next generation being inspired, motivated, but also getting help and getting resources to carry that baton further.
The new museum traces Obama's rise and time in office. It highlights his accomplishments, but also documents where the former president feels his administration fell short. There's even a section dedicated to his work on the Iran nuclear deal, a deal recently scrapped and replaced with a new one by President Trump. What do you make of what we know about the deal so far?
I am very happy to see a ceasefire, and I'm hopeful that it holds. But in terms of what was the original rationale for this war, which was there was a deal in place in which Iran had agreed not to develop nuclear weapons. This administration, or a prior version of this administration, pulled out of it, which caused then Iran to develop more nuclear capacity. We've now fought a war, spent billions and billions of dollars, put an enormous strain on our military. A lot of people have died. And it feels like we're back where we were before we started the war, except maybe a little bit worse off.
I'll give you a couple headlines. The Obama Center opens as a time warp to an old political order. With his new museum, Obama offers a trip to a parallel America. What do you make of that sentiment? That this is a reminder of what what America was.
Well, I think it's true, and I think it's a reminder of what America is. There's no doubt that we are going through a period right now of disruption, polarization. That's caused, I think, people to feel as if our democracy, our civic habits and virtues, our shared understanding of how we treat each other has started to crumble. On the other hand, when I travel across the country today, not just when I was president, you still see that sense of decency with people. You still see folks helping each other and looking out for their neighbors. I'm glad that this center and this library and the museum, this entire campus, reminds people not of the past, but reminds people of what's inside all of us. We all have the capacity for looking out for each other. We all have the capacity to feel a civic responsibility to make sure our government works. We all play a part in assuring that our elected officials are accountable. That's not something that I think we can afford to suggest is behind us.
Do you think in the current climate that someone like you, with your background and your story, do you think that you could break through now the same way you did back in 07, 08?
I do think it's harder because of the nature of your business, the media. It's more splintered. When I gave that speech at the convention,
there is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America.
Suddenly I'm a national figure because all the networks covered it. And the challenge we now have is that the media is so splintered that people who are doing excellent work, people who are just as gifted or in some cases more gifted than I am to communicate people's aspirations, hopes, and dreams, who are really doing great work at state and local levels, it's harder for them to break through. I think we're in a transition period where there are a lot of Barack and Michelle Obamas out there doing cool stuff, but our politics hasn't quite given them the space platform yet. Okay. Media hasn't shined a spotlight on them yet.
At his side through 8 years in office and everything else, former First Lady Michelle Obama. Her touch felt throughout the center, from the gowns to the garden to that sledding hill that she didn't have when she was a little girl. Michelle Obama's fingerprints are all over this place.
All over this place.
What do you want folks who come here to take away with regard to her legacy?
That she was a full partner, that her journey is just as improbable as mine. She grew up, like I said, 10 blocks from here in her aunt's house because her parents didn't own the house. And that little girl, Michelle Obama, ended up being the First Lady of the United States and was as powerful an ambassador for America and occupied that office with as much warmth and class and dignity and beauty as anybody could.
Something else near and dear to the former president's heart, sports. One of his favorite exhibits includes the unique memorabilia he's collected over the years. He actually had custom high tops that he wore while he played basketball at the White House. Known to shoot a few hoops himself during his time in office, his center even includes an NBA regulation-sized basketball court. So it was no surprise to hear he was glued to the recent NBA Finals. But, Mr. President, all those years in office, you were talking about hope and change, and who knew that you were talking about the New York Knicks?
Listen, my first real basketball hero was Walt Clyde Frazier, and I loved those 70s Knicks. And I've got a lot of friends from New York, and I know a lot of long-suffering fans.
Yes.
That I could not be happier for. So kudos to them. What an incredible run. Captain Brunson put them on their shoulders.
But perhaps the most meaningful part of the center is an exhibit that focuses on the letters Obama received from the public while in office. I understand that one of your favorite parts is this multimedia display. and it shows letters.
Yeah.
Some of the letters every night that you would send.
Right. 10 letters a day.
10 letters a day.
Yeah. Out of the 40,000 we were getting.
There was one in particular that caught my attention. There's a 7-year-old girl. Her name's Emily, and when she wrote the letter, she was the same age as Sasha. She lost her mom to cancer. Yeah. She said that before her mom died, she was able to go in her wheelchair and vote for you in 2008. And you wrote her back, of course, and you said that you wrote about losing your mom too at an early age and how that shaped you. She heard that her letter was featured here in the library, and she wanted to send a message.
I feel a lot of emotions right now, mainly peace and pride, knowing that my mother's legacy continues to live on, not only through myself, but now at the Obama Presidential Center. I also feel very grateful to be able to report back 17 years later, and I'm happy to say that I was able to graduate college with a BSN and have since become a registered nurse. I would like to take this opportunity also to thank President Barack Obama for everything he has done, as well as always reminding me to dream big dreams.
Oh, well, all right. So, like, I can tell that's a setup, but I appreciate it. What a wonderful message. You know, those letters, those letters would come every night. And what they helped me do was to just remind me that I used to tell my staff, you run elections and get elected, but the end point is, are you delivering something to make the lives of folks a little bit better who sent you? And those letters reminded me of that. Some of my favorite letters were from Republicans who would say, I didn't vote for you, I don't agree with anything you're doing, but you seem like a good dad. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And what that video that you just showed me speaks to, I hope when people come here, they're not just fixated on some speech I'm giving, not just fixated on Michelle's dresses. More than anything, as you've seen in these exhibits, you'll hear the voices of the American people. And that, I think, will give you encouragement. That makes you feel that the idea of America as a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, raucous, noisy democracy, that can work. I think their voices are what makes you feel confident in the future.
Our thanks to Craig Melvin for that report.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.